Hey, good morning. What is it? February 19th, 2019. February 18th, Monday, February 18th, 2019. And this is an episode. I don't know, call it an episode. This is pre-gym Proverbs. The people themselves have coined it as that. I just pulled up to the gym, waiting for my guy John Keith. He's going to be here shortly. Gavin the Hot Rod and live stream. Good morning, bro. I'm going to be talking a little bit about Proverbs chapter 18 today. It's a good one. Got my pre-workout. And yeah, man, about what would it be, 6 weeks into the new year? 7 weeks into the new year. I hope everybody's having a fantastic morning. I know I am. I remember growing up when I was a kid. Hey, if you're just tuning in, let me know where you're watching this from. Shoot me some heart emojis. I always like those. I remember I was reading in my other devotional. I read New Morning Mercies by David Platt every single morning, as well as read a chapter of Proverbs in the mornings. And I was reading in the other one, hey, Brooklyn, New York in the house. What up? Good morning, good morning, good morning, Harmony. Dallas, Texas in the house. And he was sharing about how as children, when I have a 4-year-old and he keeps hitting me with this question of why, right? He's always like, why, which is get overwhelming. Man, Beats in the house. Good morning. What up? Germany in the house. I love it. And Levi's in that why stage. And I don't know how many of you guys remember that stage, how many of you guys been around kids that had the stage. But it's cool because from one perspective, it's this wonder that he has, this desire to know, right? Life, understand life, better get a grasp on life. And he asks a lot of questions, and I don't get irritated. The why back to back can get a little annoying, but him asking questions is actually really cool because I love explaining stuff to him and trying to break stuff down to him in a way that a 4-year-old would understand. So I don't mind him asking me why. And then I remember being a kid and being in that same exact spot and asking those types of questions. So again, I don't know how many of you guys are kids. If you're just tuning in, let me know where you're watching this from. And then I remember being a teenager, and I remember having my life just looking like a mess. You know what I'm saying? Not knowing the meaning of life, spending a lot of time thinking and trying to figure it out and understanding that I'm at that awkward stage of transitioning. Atlanta in a house. What up? Good morning. And the tension of being a teen, the tension of not being an adult, but not being a child, right? And that phase as a child where you realize that you're not just a cute kid no more, that you are now becoming a young man. Chi-Town, what up? And I'm really struggling with that. And I had the immigrant thing on top of that. I had the, not knowing English as my first language on top of that, having trouble learning how to read on top of that, growing up, in a predominantly black and Hispanic neighborhood and being the only white kid on top of that. I had a lot of things working, I wouldn't say against me, but just working to confuse me. You know what I'm saying? Houston in the house, just got home from work overnight. Whoa. Overnight, man. God bless you, bro. So I read this proverb today, and a phrase jumped out at me, and I wanted to share it with you guys. I'm going to post it right here, pin it. Let's see. Proverbs 18:1. I didn't just pick the first verse, by the way. I had read the chapter and listened to the chapter multiple times this morning. When I read and then I listen. So, hey, if you're just tuning in, let me know where you're watching this from. I'm in San Diego, North County, San Diego, to be exact. About to go into the gym. My man John Keith is going to pull up. So look, check this out. This is really cool. It says, unfriendly people care only about themselves. They lash out at common sense. When you're transitioning into adulthood, and a lot of you guys are young adults, some of you guys are teenagers, some of you guys are grown, but common sense isn't so common anymore. And as you're trying to figure out the meaning of life, as you're trying to figure out how everything works, and you will never figure out how everything works. Shout out to my West Coast early risers, man. It's not even 7 a.m. Y'all in here in the chat with us. I got my pre-workout. Texas in the house. As you're trying to figure out how things work, you don't really quite understand what common sense is. You don't really get what is common and what is not common. And you could tend to lash out at it, right? You could tend to lash out at it because you're trying to self-preserve. You're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to guard yourself. And it says, unfriendly people care only about themselves. They lash out at common sense. Now, here's some interesting statistics when we talk about common sense. Interesting statistics. 1 out of 5 people in America are dealing with some type of mental health illness, right? 1 out of 5. Off the top, there's people that are dealing with mental illness. Second interesting statistic, 60% of Americans are overweight. 60% are overweight. Another interesting fact, 70 to 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. They're broke. They're just surviving. They're just floating through life, just trying to make it from one paycheck to the next paycheck. And I can go on and on and on. Tanya from Canada, hey, that's what's up. Most of us don't even know what common sense is. Like, common sense has become uncommon, right? And so if we're lashing out, it's because we're lashing out because we've lost touch with reality to an extent. Most Americans carry an average of $10,000 in debt. And Proverbs in general is about the art of living life well. That's what wisdom is, the art of living life well. So unfriendly people care only about themselves. They lash out at common sense. They lash out at common sense. You know anybody that just lashes out at common sense? As a teenager, I would lash out at common sense. I didn't know what I was talking about. I thought I had all the answers. I would just lash out at common sense because it didn't seem like it made sense. It seemed like it was more complicated than that. It seems like, and it was like, the older you get, it's not that complicated. You love people, you treat people well, you love God, right? You live on less than what you make. You become a generous person. You take care of your body. It's common sense. Most of it is common sense, but most of the people in America specifically, I can't speak internationally, but in America aren't very common. To be successful, to be great, at the art of living life, well, you have to be uncommon. You have to be uncommon. You have to be different. You have to be polar opposite. You have to be a freak almost to an extent, and that is now common. Right? To be different is the common sense, right? It's uncommon sense, I guess you could say. But common sense is to be different. That, in the Old Testament, it refers to us as a peculiar people, a different type of people that just stand out. And I think most of the people that are struggling are disconnected from common sense. They're disconnected from it. And so, by and large, are we unfriendly because we lash out at common sense, or do we lash out at common sense because we're unfriendly? There's a correlation there. It's an interesting correlation there, right? Unfriendly people care only about themselves. So they're unfriendly, they care only about themselves, and they lash out at common sense. If you're just tuning in, let me know where you're watching this from. IG Live. Appreciate you guys. Do you gain common sense or is it nature? That's a great question. I think you can grow in common sense. I think you can grow in wisdom, right? Wisdom is common sense in a lot of ways. So unfriendly people care only about themselves. Shout out to Seattle in the house. I see you, bro. They care only about themselves. So one, that's not an attractive attribute. So they're unfriendly. They care only about themselves. They lash out. And not that they just lash out. It's not like they lash out at evil or they lash out at stupidity. They lash out at common sense. They lash out at the very things that are common and that are going to help them and are going to help them thrive. That's like a triple negative, right? Or quadruple negative. My question is why? And I think the why is we don't know a lot. And we overcomplicate a lot. And a lot of us kind of get stuck in that, like, the joke now is like adulting. Everybody's talking about adulting, right? And we get stuck in that phase between being teenagers and becoming adults. And this is what I mean. Think about your parents at your age. If you're in your late 20s, early 30s, try to think back to how your parents were. And for the most part, my parents seemed way more adult and grown when they were my age than I do now. I seem like way closer to still being youthful. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I have way more fun than my parents did at this age. life isn't as serious. I think there's a generational disconnect in terms of how we're approaching youth, how we're approaching fun, how we're approaching wisdom. And it's because of this thing called adolescence. Adolescence is the phase between being a child and being an adult. It's the in-between. It's the teenager. It's the messy years. It's the you trying to figure everything out, right? It's this margin. And adolescence used to be like 18 to 21, then it became 18 to 25, and then now it's like cats could just remain in that stage up until their 30s, living in their mom's basement, you know what I'm saying, and just kind of figuring things out, right? Avoiding common sense, avoiding the need to do things that are uncomfortable, to do things that are sacrificial, to do things that are going to get you to that next season of life, because we've overcomplicated it. We've overcomplicated it. And life isn't as complicated as we think it is. There's mystery to it all. There's a degree of just not knowing, but it's not that complicated. I was talking to somebody yesterday. We were talking about mixing on my Zoom call. If you're not a patron, consider becoming one. We do a Sunday night Zoom call. Really dope. We actually streamed yesterday's on YouTube. And I was talking to my man, G.I. Soul, who's a super talented artist. We were talking about mixing specifically. And he was like, man, I feel like I just can't get the mixing thing down. Mixing is just so crazy. It's like, it's like the Big Mac, the combination of things all combined, and like how to make a great Big Mac. And I was like, yeah, bro. But like at the end of the day, it's just a Big Mac. Like it's not that complicated. Like it's just a burger. Mixing is just a song. We tend to like mystify things that aren't that complicated. And then we get discouraged because we put up these blocks in front of us. And I'm using the example of mixing, but we could do that with finances. We could do that with, you name it, right? Oh, I don't know how to make money. I don't know how to become debt free. Oh man, I don't know how to get up early in the morning, get my day started right. I don't know how to get fit. I don't know how to eat right. Right? We put these barriers up and we limit ourselves, when the reality is like anybody can learn any skill, right? My man Rem DMC said, I don't live in my mom's basement, but could it be because the price of living has skyrocketed since our parents were our age? Price of living has went up, bro. You make a very, very valid point. And I live in San Diego, some of the most expensive real estate. I think you live in Seattle. Did I get that right? So the cost of living has gone up. However, there are other things that they probably dealt with, our parents dealt with, that were other expenses and other things that maybe we don't deal with. That's not a factual stat necessarily. I don't know what the cost of living was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But nevertheless, there are still places in the country that it hasn't gone up, right? We're just thinking about metropolitan areas like New York and San Diego, LA, Los Angeles, Seattle, but that's not true everywhere. On top of which, you have to adapt, right? So even if the cost of living has gone up, like you have to adapt. So I live in San Diego. Cost of living here is expensive. Really expensive. So I've had to figure out how to adapt and make more money. I have friends that didn't want to adapt, and they adapted in a different way. They moved. They moved somewhere cheaper. I had friends that moved to Texas, Dallas. I had friends that moved into the desert, into the middle of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? They adapted. You know what I'm saying? Social media and television makes people more self-aware of wanting what others have and thinking their lives are perfect, and that's making people more upset about their own life, making our own story. Totally right. Hey, what was that guy's name on your stream the one where you were listening to people's music? Which guy? You talking about G.I. Soul? Yeah, I got you. The mixing point you just made brought up makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So it's like anybody can learn any skill. I could teach just about anybody to the basics of mixing. Now you have to refine the craft and you have to get better. Anybody can learn how to make more money. Anybody can learn how to hustle. Anybody can learn. The question isn't can you learn the skill? The question is, do you have it in you? Like, do you have that fire in you to evolve and to grow and to level up and to become a more refined version of who God created you to be? Like, do you have that in you? Do you have that toughness, that mental, just fortitude to just go after whatever thing that you're talking about? And the thing is, once you start getting different areas together, it becomes a domino effect. It becomes a domino effect. You know what I'm saying? the more I got in tune with cleaning up my finances, the better I started eating. The better I started eating, the more in shape I got. The more in shape I got, the more my marriage would thrive. And the more my marriage would thrive, the more my business would thrive, right? The generations nowadays don't have the same pride and work ethic as our parents. In most cases, a lot of cats nowadays just wait for the handout. I hope that's not true. I mean, that's a very bleak way of looking at the world, Chief. I hope that ain't it, but maybe you're right. Maybe it is a generational disconnect. Yeah, maybe it is. I think the generations nowadays are definitely more in tune with like not just being consumed with money. You know what I'm saying? Like, which is a good and a bad thing, because then you could be aligned to purpose. Like, you could be aligned to purpose. You want a job that's fulfilling. You want a career that's fulfilling. Where like I feel like our parents just had to do what they had to do to get by. You know what I'm saying? So I think you make a great point. I'm trying to think of the flip side of that statement. You know what I'm saying? Like the flip side of that is maybe they're just not as consumed with money. Therefore, it appears like they don't want to work as hard. Therefore, they don't have as much money and they struggle. That's another possibility. Hey, if you're just tuning in, let me know where you're watching this from. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're doing pre-gym Proverbs. Proverbs 18:1 says, unfriendly people care only about themselves. They lash out at common sense. Unfriendly people care only about themselves. So, circling back around, unfriendly people care only about themselves. Are they unfriendly because they care only about themselves, or they care only about themselves because they're unfriendly? Which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? The point is, all of this is a byproduct of lashing out at wisdom, right? Being unfriendly, caring only about yourself, lashing out. It's a byproduct of lashing out at wisdom. Common sense is wisdom. Handling your money God's way is wise. Handling your marriage God's way is wise. Handling your your health and your body God's way, time God's way. That's what wisdom is, right? Miami in the house. I'm reading the NLT version. And so, sorry, I'm chewing the ice. I don't mean to smack, and so us lashing out at wisdom, us lashing out at common sense, us lashing out at the art of doing life well, which is what wisdom is defined as, knowledge applied. Us lashing out at that is actually going to make us appear as unfriendly, and going to make us self-absorbed, and going to make us not walk in our full purposes. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure when I'm coming to South Africa, brother. When you book me a show and fly me out, that's when I'm coming. Mama dudes, what up? Good morning. So unfriendly people care only about themselves. They lash out at common sense. So in the pursuit of one's own interest, in the pursuit of thinking you have all the answers, of thinking you're smarter than God, of thinking that you have the entire universe figured out, the byproduct of that is actually you become an unfriendly person that's self-absorbed. Wisdom, God's way of doing things, the art of doing life well, talks a lot about generosity, talks a lot about giving back. The most wealthy people I know, the most successful people I know, tend to be the most generous people I know. That's an interesting correlation, right? That we see successful, wealthy people as greedy and like the stereotype that's fed to us. But the truth is, if you actually step back and take an inventory of the people you know that are really wealthy, the majority of them are actually very generous. They're very generous towards their local churches. They're very generous towards people in need. There's a stereotype there, right? Well, guess what? Generosity, by and large, it doesn't make sense on paper. God's principles don't always make sense on paper, but generosity, by and large, makes you a more attractive person. It makes you a more quality person. It makes you a more loving person. You know what I'm saying? My bad, maybe bad timing. Just got an idea what the live stream's about. Yeah, we're talking about Proverbs 18:1. My man John Keith is walking up. That means he's going to need me to wrap this up soon. Proverbs 18:1. Unfriendly people care about themselves. They lash out at common sense, right? Hey, bud. They lash out at common sense. You ready for me to go? You know what this is? Everybody, John Keith, ladies and gentlemen, St. Keith.
Hey, yeah, yes.
So we're talking about Proverbs 18:1. Unfriendly people care only about themselves. They lash out at common sense. And is that good? It's a good verse, right?
Solomon
is savage,
hilarious.
Right? I feel like sometimes the rich do that because they find that money isn't everything and can't buy happiness. That's a fact. So what I'm saying is, I told him about the statistic we read up when we sat and read up all those statistics the other day, and it was like, 1 out of 5 Americans are struggling with some type of mental illness. 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 60% of Americans are overweight. And how common sense, wisdom, the art of doing life well, knowledge applied has become uncommon. And when things that are uncommon become common, being average, being normal, being, not having it together, by and large, you then become an unfriendly, self-absorbed person that's just concerned with self-preservation. You're concerned with your thing, your agenda. Well, by and large, people who are generous tend to be more attractive. People who are focused, people who are loving, people who are giving back tend to be more attractive. They tend to be more friendly.
Yeah, like hot. They're
hot. They tend to be hot.
They tend to be hotter.
Somebody said more money, more problems for sure. Shame show? Yeah, man, so I think it's important for us just to have a gauge of how are we approaching these things? Are we going after life in the way that God would have us go after life? Are we being aware that we're not going to have all the answers, but God does? And in that, if we have access to the creator universe, we could walk in that, which by and large will make us more friendly, make us more loving, make us more generous, make us more compassionate, make us more empathetic, make us more, all those things that Jesus talked about, kind, gentle. Those are all byproducts of, first of all, a transformed, regenerated heart, but then the application of God's way of doing things. I think a lot of us get the transformed heart, the regenerated heart, but then we stay in that like adolescent adulting zone, and we don't really know how to evolve. You know what I'm saying? We don't really know how to grow because the rest of our society, we have the theological part down, but the rest of our society, the rest of our culture is preaching to us something that's completely contrary to God's way of doing things. And it's sad. And I don't want you guys to go through that. You know what I'm saying? So dig in the word, press into Jesus, get around some good people, get some mentors, read some books, go outside, do some exercise and get some fresh air, some sunshine, something to break you out of this matrix of, being just not having common sense. I don't know how I wanted to phrase that. People perish because of lack of knowledge. Amen. That's a really good verse. Anyway, guys, we're going to get in and do this gym workout. I'm going to actually move the car closer.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's cold. What's the weather right now, bro? It's like 41 degrees. 41 degrees is cold for San Diego.
You know what, though? I put on...
Hey, why don't you hold that?
So guys, look, check this. The thing is, I put on some weight, you know what I'm saying? And so everything is just not as cold. Like, I was walking outside, like, yes, it is cold. No, you're still in front of it. Yeah. It is cold, but I was walking this morning outside without this crew neck on, and I was like, it's cold. But that was it. I was like, it's cold.
Show them how cold that is.
Look, wait, hold up. How you turn this around?
Double tap.
Okay.
Can you see the steam?
Wait, hold up.
Let me back up. Let me see the steam.
Yeah. All right, look, check this out. Look at the pool, all right? This is how you know it's cold. You gotta go some more because you see the steam coming off the pool? That pool ain't hot like that, you know what I'm saying? The steam is coming off the pool. It looks like a hot tub, but blood is not that.
It's just a regular pool.
It's a regular pool. You know what I'm saying? So it's cold. It's cold. But I'm just not that cold. Praise God. Shando ri shiri bra raka chura tiri rambo shodo ra. Yeah, I'm gonna stop playing with the spirit like that.
Yeah, how about you stop? I know you had to get the tongues.
Yo, so yeah, and let that be a lesson to all of you guys about.
Tie it in, baby. Tie it in.
Yeah, check it out. So look, the unfriendly people care only about themselves. See, I care about more, so I put on more. See, I care about more, so I put on more.
Put on the armor of God. Jesus Christ.
Yes. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's the move. Awesome. I've actually followed him. His name is Mike Sermon. All right, y'all. We love you guys, man. Have a great day. Make it count. We're going to get in this gym and make it count. Peace.